Good morning, friends. We continue our history part of the unit, They Made a Difference. Our learning goal today is to know about the lives of people in those periods of the past. An important question, though, is can we trust what we read about people and events in history? They happen. A lot of the things we've read about happened a long time ago. Can we trust it? How can we verify it? How can we know for sure that was how it did happen? Historians do this all the time. They find about the past by listening to stories sometimes. Maybe if you listen to a story from your parents or your grandparents about the past, you'll be learning about the past. You also learn about the past from reading books, newspapers, looking at pictures and photos. You may find those in a library, like the one we have at school. We also learn about the past from buildings, like churches, castles, or the mosque at the river, like we went that time, and we saw that it was built hundreds of years ago, and we knew a little bit about the lives of those people. We learn about the past from everyday objects also, objects that survive, that maybe were buried in the ground, and someone that used them long time ago, now we look at them, and it gives us clues about the life that those people led. We have two types of evidence. All those things, those books, those artifacts, those objects from the past are evidence. And there's two main types of evidence that historians look at all the time. The first one is primary sources. Primary sources are documents or things that were produced during the period that you are studying. So if you are studying the old Neolithic man, when long thousands of years ago, when there were not really no cities yet, there was no TV, no documentaries, no tapes, how do we know about him? They only started writing after that. We can learn about them by the tools they made, the buildings they left behind. They give us clues. Maybe the rubbish can give us clues to what they ate. Their clothing, if it's still something surviving, it gives us clues about how they made their clothing, what materials, what animals they killed to make their clothing. This type of evidence is called from primary sources. Things that are original, first-hand accounts or objects from the time we're studying. Examples are right here. Letters that were written at the time, diaries, autobiographies, because it's the same person is writing what happened to him, songs from the time, tools, speeches. Maybe you remember a speech you heard. It was rather long, I remember. Sorry about that. But that is primary source. It's an actual thing that happened. Paintings, in this case we have some hieroglyphics. They tell us stories about a particular culture, and we may even learn how to decipher them and learn to read them. Research and census data are government accounts. The government counts how many people there are in one country. That's important for a historian to know. Then the second type of evidence is secondary sources. Secondary sources are second-hand accounts that interpret primary sources. So often they'll use primary sources to tell us something about it. So textbooks, like the one we sometimes use from the library, that tell us about, say, for example, the Romans, that textbook is using interpretations of maybe Roman buildings or Roman ruins or Roman books to tell us how the Romans lived. If you wanted to see a primary source, you would have to go to Rome and see the buildings, or you would have to read a book written by a Roman. There's many. You could find one. But if you're reading just a secondary source is someone else who read that book from a Roman and tells you his interpretation of how Romans lived their lives. It can be textbooks, commentaries, documentaries on TV, the website research we've done, or essays that people wrote about people from the past. So can you think of other types of primary sources or secondary sources that are not included here? Can you think of anything that people actually used in the past? Can you think of anything else that interprets the past? You can put them right here in these two boxes. After that, I would like you to look at each one of these images and give me your best guess. Are they primary or are they secondary sources? Were they objects that were actually used in the past, or are they just an interpretation of the past? Is it someone just telling us about what happened in the past? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna let you read them by yourself at home, and all you have to do is tell me, this is a primary source or a secondary source? Primary source, secondary source. Remember, primary sources, things from the actual past or books written during that period by a person that lived in that past. Secondary sources are people who looked at those objects or read those books and told us their interpretation about them. Good luck. I think you're going to do very well.